morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. Okay, I have a confession. I got something wrong last week and I have to fess up. I said Tasmania had already had their winter school holidays, which was a lie. Thank you to Suze who pointed that out to me on Substack. Actually, they aren't even on holidays yet. They don't start till July 11, so they're one of the very last to get a break. So apologies, Tassie. Up on the mainland, however, everyone is on school holidays right now, albeit with all different start and end dates. But as of today, right now, there is not a class in session, as far as I'm aware. Some private schools also have some different start and end times, so they may make a liar out of me again. But that's why you might find the commute to work a little quieter, the shopping centres a little busier, and flights way more expensive. Now, we are going to talk a little bit about parenting today, but this is something that affects all of us, not just parents. Iiska sent me a message asking about a situation she found herself in on a parenting Facebook group. Now, she got slammed, and she's not sure why, but she thinks parents might just be a bit too scared to discipline their kids nowadays. Let's find out what's been happening while you were sleeping first. It's Monday, July 6. Authorities are insisting there is no bird flu crisis in Australia despite growing numbers of wild birds confirmed to be carrying the deadly virus. Poultry farms have been asked to consider moving their birds inside for the time being, as New South Wales confirmed their first case of the H5N1 strain of avian flu over the weekend. The giant petrel was found on a beach at Hawk's Nest on the state's mid-north coast. This case is in addition to several birds that have tested positive in both Western Australia and South Australia. The New South Wales Agriculture Minister Tara Moriarty called for calm, saying she wants to stress that there has only been one bird found so far, that there is no crisis and no need to panic. We're also being told that eggs and poultry bought from the shops are safe to consume. If you do see sick or dead wild birds, avoid contact, record it on your phone, take photos and video to show any kind of strange behaviour, and report to the Emergency Animal Disease Hotline on 1800 675 888. The family of a 17-year-old Thai girl found in a suitcase in the resort town of Pattaya last week say they want justice to take its course and have declined compensation. The Thai justice system allows for those facing criminal charges to pay the victims or their families a sum of money as a sign of remorse. That payment can lead to a reduction in jail time. But the father of Tanchanogdon Homla has declined a payment from 45-year-old Australian man Simon Peter Carman, who's been charged with the taking of a minor for sexual purposes, murder, concealing a body and moving or destroying a body. Mr. Carman has denied the charges. If he is found guilty, he could face life in prison or the death penalty. NAIDOC Week is now underway with local events and activities happening across the country to mark this year's milestone 50 years of Deadly. The 2026 National NAIDOC Awards finalists were announced yesterday, recognising First Nations elders, organisers, artists and communities who've built and sustained the NAIDOC movement over 5 decades. National NAIDOC Committee Co-Chair Auntie Lynette Riley says these finalists reflect the strength, diversity and excellence of First Nations people right across the country. Their stories are a powerful reminder of why NAIDOC continues to matter after 50 years. The winners will be announced on August 15 in Umbatwa, Alice Springs. 3 sons of the former Iranian leader killed by Israeli and US strikes have attended his funeral, but not the son who's become his successor. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei died alongside several of his family members in an airstrike back in February. 3 of his sons, Mustafa, Maisam and Masood, were seen praying by their father's coffin, but Mojtaba, the son who's been named to take over from him, was not in attendance. It's believed Mojtaba was injured in the attack that killed his father and hasn't been seen since. Despite a US-mediated ceasefire with Hamas, Israel has reportedly struck Gaza, killing 2 people. The Israeli military is yet to comment on the strike, which hit a group of people walking on the road in the middle of Omar al-Mokhtar, a city in the north of the enclave. Hamas has accused Israel of violating the ceasefire, but Israel has accused Hamas of the same. Both parties remain deadlocked in the peace talks that have so far failed to agree on the second phase of the deal. US President Donald Trump has delivered his 4th of July address despite a delay due to storms and soaring temperatures. The crowd had waited hours to get inside the fences near the Washington Monument after spending time in nearby museums and government buildings to get away from the 39-degree heat and the lightning storm. Trump said that marking the country's 250th anniversary was always going to happen despite the weather-related setback, saying there's no way we can be deterred.
Good evening, America. If you think that was easy, it wasn't. And I want to thank everybody because they did the right thing. They saw lightning, and I said, there's no way if we have to speak in front of one person at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm going to be here. There's no way we can be deterred.
The 250-year milestone was being planned before Trump took office with a non-partisan group set up to run it, but the Trump administration has brought in the Freedom 250 group instead, fencing off an area of the National Mall for the Great American State Fair, which featured displays from conservative groups and defence contractors. The white nationalist organisation, the Patriot Front, marched through the streets of Washington in the lead-up to the event, which several Democratic-led states declined to send a delegation to, and many performers who had been scheduled to take to the stage pulled out of it, citing concerns about the celebration being less about the 250 mark and more about campaign-style politics. Okay, so you may have seen some of the wedding details from New York as Taylor Swift and her man Travis Kelce got hitched on the weekend, but here is everything that we know. The guest list was huge, with 1,000 people invited, but we know for sure that her bestie Abby was there, along with both the bride and groom's family and friends. As far as celebs go, Selena Gomez and Gigi Hadid were in attendance, as were Millie Bobby Brown, Graham Norton, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, Dakota Johnson, Steven Spielberg, Ellie Goulding, and a bunch of people who we all know, but the list is far too long to read out here. Taylor's brother was her man of honour, and Jason Kelce, Travis's brother, was his best man. Travis's nieces were the Flower Girls, but outside of that, they didn't have a bridal party. Adam Sandler officiated the event. Now, you might remember he's a bit of a Swiftie himself and had Travis do a cameo in his Happy Gilmore sequel recently. Sandler also reportedly reprised his wedding singer role and played a song for the couple, and Stevie Nicks did also perform. Swift walked down the aisle to one of her own songs being played by a string quartet. The couple exchanged their own personal vows inside Madison Square Garden, which had been transformed into a fairy tale castle built inside the arena with a peach and white theme, described by guests as a garden inside the garden. The bride and groom wore outfits designed by Christian Dior's Jonathan Anderson. I have yet to see a picture of either of them, so not sure what to say about the dress yet, but someone did mention that Travis wore a white tux. The wedding favours included a lace handkerchief with the couple's wedding logo on it, 2 T's with 2 hearts linking them together, under which was written, "So it's gonna be forever," a lyric from Swift's 2014 song Blank Space. The couple reportedly kicked off their wedding weekend by donating a ton of money to charities across the US, and as soon as they said "I do," screens outside the venue lit up with the words "Just Married," with the word "just" with 2 T's for Taylor and Travis. To sport, and it wasn't the outcome Aussie fans were after, the Socceroos going down to Egypt on penalties on Saturday. Now the team is also sweating on Jordan Bose, who went down with a serious knee injury late in the first half of the game. The wing-back was left laying on the ground after a challenge in Australia's round of 32 loss. He was helped from the field by trainers, only to return to the bench on crutches a while later. The 23-year-old has now undergone scans, hoping he hasn't done his ACL or something equally as serious. And I know I said this in an incredibly biased way on Friday, because I am South Australian. I did say go the T-Birds, but it was founder because the Thunderbirds capped off a stunning season with their biggest ever Suncorp Super Netball Grand Final victory on Saturday night. They took down the Melbourne Vixens 61-40, clinching their 3rd premiership in 4 years. Now I'm going to end with a surprise 4th of July prezi from Beyonce today. The singer dropped her first new track in 2 years.
In this little game of mine, and he said,
It's called Morning Dew, in brackets, donk. A press release from her people say it's a direct nod to her loyal Bayhive community to commemorate the upcoming celebration of B-Day, which is the 20-year anniversary, which is up in September for her 2nd album of that name. The song will appear on the 20th anniversary reissue of B-Day. Well, that is a wrap of the top stories for July 6. Next, are parents too scared to discipline their kids? We find out from psychologist Elizabeth Shaw how we actually need to have a conversation about stuff like the manosphere. I recently got a message from Iiska on Substack, who was concerned that she'd been slammed in a Facebook group for asking a woman who was having problems with her son about what discipline she was providing as the parent. I asked Elizabeth Shaw, a clinical and counselling psychologist and the CEO of Relationships New South Wales, to help us understand the situation. Elizabeth, welcome to the Solo Bureau.
It's great to be here.
Okay, someone reached out to me with a question and you immediately popped into my mind as the right person to ask about this. So what they wrote to me is they were on, there's lots of community pages where people are talking about certain topics. She was in a parenting community Facebook page and she read this story of someone who said, "My son is 10 and has been exposed to manosphere content from his friends from school and I don't know what to do. I need help and guidance on what to do. He went from a sweet, loving boy to using disgusting slurs. Whenever my husband cooks or cleans, he calls him names. Whenever I do something, he insults me. It's getting too much and I'm upset." Now, the person who sent this to me said they responded in that community Facebook page by saying, "Look, just as their parent, how are you disciplining your child when he does those things? And are you playing an active role in ensuring he doesn't do that?" And she got attacked in the comments for parent shaming, parent guilting. And so her question was like, kids today don't seem to have to take any responsibility and parents seem fearful of disciplining their children. And I wondered how true that was, Elizabeth. Are you seeing that in your line of work where children are, and I want to say this in the most mindful way possible, because when I was growing up, we had a healthy fear of adults. They disciplined us, gave us boundaries, and I do understand that there are many, many instances where that goes over a boundary into child abuse, and I'm not denying that that doesn't happen. But there has to be a certain level of fear of reprisal for things that you do and consequences to your actions, which seems to be lacking a little bit now. Would you agree that that is the case, Elizabeth?
Look, I think it's understandable that as we're having debates in society generally about what's free speech and what's appalling behaviour, that plays out in the home as well. And certainly many parents are almost doing a corrective strategy from their own childhood of, being seen and not heard and saying, well, I want my kids to speak up and say controversial things and find their voice and be empowered. And those are all good things. But there is nowhere in society where saying anything you like is going to work for you. Speaking up is always about the skill in how you articulate yourself, being mindful of the impact on your audience, representing yourself well. These are skills for life that we do our children no favours by having a family environment where anything goes, and almost getting confused by whether saying something in an appalling way, whether we should give room for that. So I think we do need to think about this, and like anything else we do with kids, it's about how we equip them for other environments. So rather than think, oh, well, maybe, I'll go along with it because I can understand they're angry with me or there's something I can manage as a parent, but think, what if they actually got the message that speaking to an adult is useful and that happens at school or in the workplace? So I think sometimes parents need to see themselves not just what they can take on the chin, but how they represent hierarchy and good relationships in other settings.
So how do you then balance that, Elizabeth, that line between disciplining your child for behaviour that you consider to be unacceptable and also instilling in them that ability to think for themselves, and because that's part of your job as a parent, is to create space for them to become their own person and eventually disconnect from you and become a well-adjusted adult. So how do you discipline a child, especially when they're adapting ideology that they're learning through either their peers at school or via YouTube or something like that, as opposed to they're discovering things and trying to work out whether that fits for them?
Look, I think we've all had the experience with parents that if you do something controversial, parents just sort of either reacting with discipline, shutting you down, or ridicule. And over generations, this happens, a sort of a scoffing at whatever it might be, what young people do, And we've got to be careful that with a meaty topic such as the things we're seeing with the manosphere, if you react only with discipline, then you've missed an opportunity to connect with your young person, explore the issue, explore why this is appealing to them, what it is that they're taking on, and also explaining the consequences of it if you act this out in regular society. So I think discipline is part of it, because it may well be that you do need to say, look, you actually, like, consistent with any other year and any other behaviour, that way of speaking to me is not acceptable. But also to be able to say, I can see that you've got some new ideas, or that you've been talking about people that you're interested in, or you're talking with your friends about certain things. I'm up for that conversation about what's going on for you for this and why it's drawing your attention. But while we have that conversation, you're not going to be able to speak to me like that, because it won't be a way that we can advance things together. So it's about doing both. Because if you ridicule it or just say, all of that's rubbish, like you might say around Pauline Hanson or Donald Trump or any of the other major figures that we're seeing, what we lose is that moment to be curious with our kids, because you will only dig them in a deeper hole about their being reactionary if they get a rise out of you as well.
Can we talk a little bit about dads for a second? Because what I've noticed, I'm in a few parenting groups too, and it is almost exclusively mums having conversations like this. And there might be dads groups that I'm not a part of. I don't claim to be across every single community group on the internet. But also, I was trying to think about dads playing more of a role in disciplining sons in particular at this stage, who seem to be a little bit more susceptible to this manosphere discussion. And I felt like maybe dads weren't doing enough. And then I thought about my own experience. My dad was barely there. My mum did pretty much all of the discipline, and our dads kind of worked and were the breadwinners and didn't do a huge lot of child raising. Dads are doing more with their kids than ever before. But what do we say to dads in this situation where it comes to especially these manosphere discussions where it feels like dad needs to take a lead?
Look, I think it's really critical in heteronormative couples that both speak up and stand their ground about this, because I think the generations, I know you're not saying this, but just to go to the extreme point, in generations past where women might say, wait till your father gets home, where actually because they're rubbishing women, I actually need to hand this over. I think it's important that women hold their ground about it. But if say a mum is not going to get any backup from the dad, or he's ineffectual, absent, or in fact agreeing with this behaviour, then she's going to have a much tougher road. It doesn't mean she shouldn't speak up, but it may also unearth couple dynamics that need to be resolved in order to give a consistent message. It's much harder for any parenting subject if you're in active disagreement with each other. Kids can absolutely tolerate their parents being different. They know full well who to go to for what, and a lot of that is quite benign, and really having minor differences is really not a problem for kids. That's just about being different. But where it actually is working against each other, or mixed messages, or where a mum is trying to say to a son, you can't speak to me like that, and then dad gets home and sounds pretty well the same, that's not going to go well. So ideally, parents get their collective stories straight about how they're going to parent, but the mum needs to be able to hold her own in his absence. And often kids are not actually trying to be hurtful. A lot of it, they also can be. They can be quite sadistic in their own way as they test their own boundaries. But often it is that kids actually lose sight that their parents are real people, real flesh and blood people who can get hurt. And sometimes it is as simple as, look, I don't know what your intention was there in putting that way, but I found that incredibly hurtful. That's actually not how you and I speak to each other. Just reminding of the hit to the heart, which is important. And then I think rather than any position like wait till your dad gets home, it might be let's sit down as a family and talk about what's acceptable. And for older kids, maybe watching the Manosphere documentary together, it can be quite confronting, but actually saying, look, what appeals to you about this? What are your friends saying? How are you finding all of this? Do you feel pressure to keep up? Opening up the conversation And then, ideally, dad being able to say what it's like for him, because a lot of men are really struggling with this. The pressure on men to be that stereotype is really intense, and men who are really wanting to do it differently, they're still socialised into those tropes that tell them that really a strong, successful man is what a real man is. It's pretty hard if you're not that.
Just one more thing. The person who wrote that original post said that the way that they were dealing with this situation with their young son was to pull him out of school and ban him from all devices. And I'm so torn about, whether you take your child out of school and homeschool is completely up to you, but I feel like the devices conversation is such a difficult one that we're still not quite nailing, because sure, you can ban them. They might find a way around it. They're also going to have friends who have them, so if they go to anyone else's house, they'll probably access it. But also, it's a part of their world. Just because it wasn't a part of ours as a kid doesn't mean it's wrong for them to use devices, because that is their world. That is the world that they have grown up in. What do you feel about banning devices or stopping children from accessing anything like that?
Look, there's perhaps so many factors in that. It might have felt that parent just didn't know how to counteract the volume of stuff coming at their young person from the school and got overwhelmed and then did a huge corrective action. I would certainly encourage anybody before taking such dramatic measures to get some professional sort of backup and support, because isolating your child as if that's going to inoculate them or inoculate the family is probably not going to work out for you. If your young person has got really, really immersed in a peer group and are getting some of their identity needs met, their own shaping of their personality, or, getting some peer connection that way, then you have to replace it with something, or they could really flounder. So a sharp discipline response is probably because how the behaviour was being acted out at home. The threat to the family is not the ideas themselves. The threat to the family is when those ideas have no way of being fruitfully digested and critiqued and analysed and sort of laid to rest, or where people come to peace with things. I think most of us in society are looking at all sorts of dark forces at the moment and recognising the effect on our mental health, what we can take on. Since COVID, there's a lot more kind of social rudeness and intolerance and microaggressions that we're seeing across the community. And the way to manage that is not to isolate yourself. It certainly is to protect yourself, but it's much better to have good people in our lives that help us think things through, critically analyse, say, what's that going to mean for me? How does that play out in my relationships? How can I stay close to family but still be my own person? These are the bigger questions of life we need to keep percolating through our families. And sharp corrective action does have a place, but it's not something as a parent I would encourage people to reach for as a first step. It could have very problematic consequences for your family and drive your young person either underground or away from you.
Elizabeth, how's that handbook coming along that we were all supposed to get when we had a baby that tells us how to nail parenting?
Look, it's just so hard, isn't it? And the trouble is, every time we finish the handbook, even if there was one, there feels like a new curveball that's sort of subclause 12.
Yeah.
Item 60.
It's the thickest book in the world.
Well, it is. But I think that's where we have to keep it simple, which is stay in conversation, stay curious, be open to your kids' odd stages and phases, and help them with the struggles and see it that we're in it together. It's kind of your mindset. And when you get stuck, reach for good people that can help you, which might be good friends, it might be professional help. Sometimes putting it out on Facebook is just a gorgeous way to get support. But as you saw from the example you quoted, you can also get a serve, which just makes you feel worse about yourself. So you've got to be careful, don't you?
That you do. Anything. The internet can either be the best or the worst place, and sometimes at the same time it is both.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Elizabeth, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. It is invaluable to those of us who are still trying to find the right answers. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the conversation, Claire. Good to talk.
to the Monday Hang team. Remember, if you want me to look into a story in a bit more depth, just let me know. You can find me on Substack. You can DM me on Instagram too if you like. But just a reminder too that when you do ask, I may not be able to run that story immediately. Journalism requires that I put the questions to the right people to make sure that we're getting the right answers. They don't always happen immediately, so please be patient. I'm following up all those stories until I'm satisfied that we have the right information for you. Thank you. Have the best Monday. I'll catch you tomorrow.